Hi, I'm Jeff Richards. Welcome to Japan Today Spotlight. Relations between Japan and China were in bad shape by the end of 2025, and it doesn't look likely to change in 2026. The bilateral relationship began going downhill in November. It followed remarks by Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi about how Japan might respond if China used military force to take Taiwan. And another source of long-standing friction is flaring up again. It's the dispute over the Senkaku Islands. Chinese Coast Guard vessels have become a near-permanent fixture near the Senkakus, a group of uninhabited islands administered by Japan, but also claimed by China, which calls them the Diaoyu Islands. In 2025, China's Coast Guard patrolled around the islands on 357 days of the year. That's created an increasingly awkward situation for the Japanese government, the Japan Coast Guard, and local fishermen. This week in Japan Today Spotlight, we're going to look at the history of the islands, why they matter to both countries, and how tensions around them could escalate between Japan and China. Now, to avoid repeating both of the names and to make it a little easier on myself, we're going to refer to the islands as the Senkakus for this video. Where are the Senkakus? Well, the Senkakus are a group of uninhabited islets in the East China Sea. They're located about 150 kilometers north of Yonaguni Island, roughly 300 kilometers east of China and around 170 kilometers northeast of Taiwan. The group consists of 5 small islands and 3 rocky outcrops. Japan administers them as part of Okinawa Prefecture. Now, China says it has historical ties to the islands, dating back to the 14th century, a claim that Japan disputes. The Japanese government formally incorporated the islands into Okinawa Prefecture in January of 1895 during the First Sino-Japanese War. Japan maintained control until its surrender at the end of World War II. From 1945 to 1972, the United States administered the islands. They were returned to Japan under the Okinawa Reversion Agreement. Later that same year, the islands were then purchased by a Japanese businessman, Hiroyuki Kurihara. Tensions spiked in 2012 after then Tokyo Governor Shintaro Ishihara proposed buying the islands. That prompted the Japanese government to purchase them and nationalize them. So why are these islands so important? The dispute gained urgency in the 1970s after a United Nations study suggested surrounding waters could hold significant oil and gas reserves. The area is also very rich in fishing grounds, and strategically, the islands sit in a sensitive location if regional conflict were ever to break out. As we mentioned at the top of the show, Chinese Coast Guard vessels were spotted near the Senkakus on 357 days last year. In 2024, that figure was only 286 days. Over the past 5 years, China has conducted 134 patrols in the area, involving hundreds of thousands of total vessel deployments and thousands of aircraft. That's a high level of activity for such small islands. Analysts say this pressure campaign is part of China's military expansion in the Western Pacific. Robert Ward, Japan chair at the London-based International Institute for Strategic Studies, told Reuters, China is really pushing its claims on the islands. It's phenomenally tense around there at the moment, yet a complete lack of Japanese economic activity could invite China to flood the area with its own ships. The need for Japan to keep showing it has a pulse in the Senkakus is really important. The Senkakus sit along a wider island chain stretching from Japan through Taiwan and down toward the Philippines. In that region, Chinese vessels have already been involved in ramming and water cannon incidents with Philippine ships. Japanese boats have had close encounters as well. The most recent confrontation came in December when China said it had expelled an illegal Japanese fishing vessel from waters around the islands. Japan gave a different account, saying it had intercepted and expelled 2 Chinese Coast Guard ships that were approaching the vessel. Fishing has long been tied to Japan's claim over the islands. It's also one of the clearest ways Japan demonstrates active control. Last year, due to rising tensions and repeated typhoons, only 8 Japanese fishing trips to the area were documented, down from 18 the year before. In December, the Japanese government began urging fishermen to avoid the Senkakus altogether. Officials fear that inspections or detentions by Chinese authorities could quickly escalate into a diplomatic crisis. Some fishermen, however, are determined to keep going. Their nationalist supporters argue that continued fishing helps reinforce Japan's sovereignty. One fisherman, 54-year-old Kazushi Kinjo, told Reuters his motivation is purely financial, not political. "I earn my income there," he said. "The sea is a treasure trove of red snapper." Another fisherman, 76-year-old Hitoshi Nakama, sees himself as a frontline defender for Japan's claims. "I'll go there for as long as I have this boat," he said. The United States recognizes that the Senkakus are administered by Japan and fall under the U.S.-Japan Security Treaty, but that doesn't guarantee the United States would respond in a crisis. The Trump administration has pressed Japan and other allies to sharply increase defense spending and to take more responsibility for their own security. Last November, President Trump urged Prime Minister Takaichi to avoid further escalating tensions with China following her comments on Taiwan. Tokyo increasingly recognizes it can't rely entirely on the United States. Japan's defense budget for fiscal 2025 stands at a record 9.9 trillion yen. The country has also stepped up drills aimed at retaking remote islands from enemy forces. Could this dispute lead to a military conflict? Paul Midford, a professor of international studies at Meiji Gakuin University's Yokohama campus, told Reuters that continued fishing trips could raise the risk of escalation. Analysts say China's Coast Guard strategy is designed to stop short of war. By maintaining a constant presence, Beijing gradually challenges Japan's control without firing a shot, while forcing Tokyo to expend resources. For Japan, the challenge is asserting that sovereignty without triggering an armed clash. The Japan Coast Guard operates under strict rules meant to completely avoid escalation. The Senkakus may be small, but the tensions surrounding them are anything but. How Japan and China handle this situation matters far beyond a few uninhabited islets. What happens there will say a lot about how far Japan and China are willing to push and how carefully these two countries manage the risks. From the Japan Today newsroom here in Tokyo, I'm Jeff Richards. See you next time.